Colombian and Venezuelan lawmakers hold the First Binational Parliamentary Meeting following the re-establishment of diplomatic and commercial relations. The UN Security Council approved sanctions against criminal groups in Haiti amid social organizations' rejection of government-sponsored interventionism. Ukraine attacks humanitarian caravan in Kherson with US-made HIMARS missiles. Authorities report at least 4 dead and 13 wounded. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Friday, the first binational parliamentary meeting between Colombia and Venezuela takes place at the Simón Bolívar International Bridge. The purpose of the meeting is to draw up a roadmap to solve border area issues and attend to the needs of the people there. In this context, lawmakers analyze the economic repercussion of having reopened the common border, as well as the resolution of diplomatic issues, specifically consular services. These meetings should yield agreements to foster the well-being of the border population and to make headway in consolidating peace and stability in both nations. The UN Security Council unanimously adopted a draft resolution establishing sanctions regime for leaders of armed groups in Haiti. The session of the Multilateral Security Organization welcomed the two resolutions, one to encourage a foreign armed intervention in the face of rising violence deepened by criminal gangs, and the other to impose sanctions on those responsible for the violence, including gang leaders. The measure seeks to try to curb the violence and help area-risk government recover from a time when the country is suffering from a cholera outbreak. Regarding violence in Haiti, the Center for Human Rights Analysis and Research reports some 755 kidnappings between January and September this year. Armed gangs resort to kidnappings in exchange for money as a way to obtain financing. Meanwhile, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported that some 16,000 people have had to flee their homes to seek refuge in other areas deemed safer. The United Nations World Food Programme reports that 40% of the population in Haiti is currently suffering from food insecurity. This is a consequence of the serious socio-political crisis and violence ravaging the country. In its most recent report, the UN agency says that some 19,000 people are for the first time under catastrophic levels of hunger. The World Food Programme predicts the food situation in Haiti will worsen in the coming years. Donald Trump's former aide, Steve Bannon, arrived at court to hear a judge hand down his sentence for refusing to testify in the congressional probe of the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. One of the masterminds behind Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and victory, Bannon was found guilty in July on 2 counts of contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena to testify over the riot at the Capitol by the former president's supporters. The Justice Department has urged a 6-month sentence for the rare charge, saying in a filing late Thursday that rather than cooperate with the court, Bannon affirmatively frustrated a congressional investigation of great national importance. On Friday, Mexico's foreign ministry confirmed that U.S. Special Presidential Climate Envoy John Kerry will meet with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador next Friday. The foreign ministry added that the officials will meet in Hermosillo, Sonora, a border state, and there López Obrador will present Kerry with the energy plan for that entity, which includes the development of renewable energies. The director for North America of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Roberto Velasco, confirmed the visit, and the main purpose of the meeting, he said, will be to discuss what has been progressing and working on energy and climate change. Peruvian President Pedro Castillo ratified his willingness to engage in a national dialogue with all political actors while welcoming the decision by the OAS to consent to implementing the Inter-American Democratic Charter. Castillo reiterated his call to all political forces, representatives of public powers, and all social sectors to a broad dialogue in favor of a commitment to stabilize democracy in Peru. The head of state said all sectors of the country must start negotiations for a national, democratic, and social compromise. President Castillo called on the powers in the nation to cooperate with the commission sent by the OAS to advance political stability in Peru. At least 100 families and several houses were affected after a thunderstorm that severely hit several regions of Paraguay. Heavy rains and strong winds have flashed several regions in Paraguay for more than 48 hours, causing damage and affecting a large number of families. In localities of the department of San Pedro in the center of the country and in the southeast, people have been reported injured by the collapse of the roof of their homes, including several children. The Ministry of Emergency Secretariat confirmed that about 400 houses were damaged by the storms. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can now follow us on TikTok at the account at TeleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Friday, EU heads of state and government reached a fragile agreement and commissioned a concrete proposal to cap rising energy prices. For some, such as the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, the agreement is incongruent. The document signed in Brussels agrees to the intervention of the energy market. They commit themselves to jointly and compulsorily acquire at least 15% of the reserves and to establish a flexible limit for the prices of gas purchases. To this end, EU leaders entrust the Community Executive with an urgent proposal. After 11 hours of negotiations, they closed the agreement, which leaves doubts such as those expressed by the German Chancellor. Germany fears that gas producers will sell to other countries. On Friday, Giorgia Meloni announced that the Coalition Brothers of Italy party proposed her to be the person in charge of forming the new government, which would make her the country's first female prime minister.
The coalition, which unsurprisingly came together for the consultations, gave a unanimous indication, shall we say as a reflection of the parliamentary majority, by proposing to the President of the Republic that I be appointed to be the person in charge of forming the new government.
United Kingdom opposition parties continue to put pressure on the government to call a general election after Liz Truss resigned as Prime Minister following just 44 days. Truss, who entered office through a leadership vote following the ousting of Boris Johnson earlier this year, is staying on as Premier until the ruling Conservative Party picks a successor, which it aims to do so by October 28th. That means the next leader will be the second in quick succession without a public mandate. Meanwhile, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, also demanded a general election, saying it is time for the Conservatives to do their duty and give the people a say. Ultimately, a general election would only be called if a new Prime Minister or enough Tory members of Parliament decided they wanted one. The Prime Minister's resignation forces a new internal election in the Conservative Party so that her successor can be appointed by Friday, October 28th. This deadline imposes an accelerated process. Each candidate must have the backing of at least 100 of the 357 members of the parliamentary bench, which reduces the number of possible contenders to 3. Once the contenders are defined, Tory MPs will hold a first elimination round to select the 2 who will be subject to the scrutiny of the party's 170,000 members, although this step could be set aside if the candidate who comes second withdraws from the race. As this party has a majority in the House of Commons, its new leader automatically becomes the next Prime Minister. On Friday, a Ukrainian missile attack killed 4 people and injured 13 in the newly annexed region of Kherson. According to the interim leader Vladimir Saldo, Ukraine fired HIMARS missiles at a civilian convoy crossing the Antonovsky Bridge. Regional authorities and military chiefs in Moscow warned as early as last Tuesday that they had reliable information of possible Kiev actions that could constitute war crimes and therefore began the evacuation of civilians to ensure their safety. It was one of these humanitarian missions that was hit by the Ukrainian attack. Russia's investigative committee said journalists were among the people killed in the shelling.
The civilian column moved on the crossing from the Kherson to the other side of the river, and at this moment the Ukrainian nationalists deliberately struck with American multiple-launch rocket systems, HIMARS, with cluster munitions for a bigger striking effect. According to preliminary data, 4 people were killed and 13 were injured. Among the victims, there are children and local media journalists.
More news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. Sudanese protesters rallied in the streets of the capital Khartoum ahead of the one-year anniversary of a military coup that derailed the country's transition as it remains in deepening political and economic turmoil. The military takeover ended a unique 2-year partnership between the military and pro-democracy groups in a transitional government that took office soon after Omar al-Bashir was removed from power on April 2019, amid a wave of street protests against his 3 decades in power. The 2021 coup sparked a wave of anti-military rallies that has drawn millions to the streets across the nation. Demonstrations have been met with deadly violence by security forces. More than 100 people have been killed and 6,000 injured. Deadly clashes between police and demonstrators protesting military's grip on power claimed around 50 lives and left 300 people injured. Haitian Prime Minister Saleh Kebsabo provided the information in a press conference on Friday after the latest protest. Authorities imposed a curfew, which came amid demonstrations against the transitional President Mohamed Idris Déby's 2-year extension of his power. France, the African Union, and others swiftly condemned the excessive use of force against protesters. Demonstrations were held in the capital N'Djamena, as well as Chad's second-largest city, Moundou, and in the towns of Toba and Sar. The World Health Organization expressed concern over the growing Ebola outbreak in Uganda. 64 cases have been confirmed since the first report in September, of which 24 have died. Dr. Machido Moeti, WHO Regional Director, expressed his concern about patient movement, which could increase the spread of the disease. In addition, Dr. Moeti welcomed the understanding of the chains of infection, which has improved considerably. Alarms about the risk of spread have been triggered by the recent cases of patients who travel from the outbreak site from 150 kilometers away. In Lebanon, the cholera outbreak that began at the beginning of the month has already recorded 160 confirmed cases. After remaining unaffected by the disease since 1993, Lebanon adds the new outbreak to its political, economic, and financial crisis. The country's health system reported that the main factor in the increase of cases is the consumption of contaminated water in several regions, and announced a set of containment measures such as the appointment of an epidemic response committee and the activation of epidemiological monitoring teams to take samples among the vulnerable population and water sources they access. In this context, the United Nations sent aid to the country in the form of medicines and other supplies. The ongoing United States plundering of Syrian oil and wheat has aroused strong condemnation from both the Syrian government and people who have been suffocating from fuel shortages and food insecurity brought by the U.S. forces. After entering Syria in 2014, the U.S. forces, under the pretext of fighting terrorist groups, have established military bases in oil-rich areas in northeastern Syria and started the systematic stealing of the country's oil. The Syrian oil ministry released a statement in August accusing the U.S. military of stealing 80% of Syrian oil. According to the statement, the U.S. forces were stealing an average of 66,000 barrels of oil per day in the country, whose average daily oil production is estimated at 80,000 barrels in the first half of 2022. In a statement issued earlier this month, the government reiterated its demand that the U.S. immediately end its illegal presence in Syria, calling such actions piracy and colonization. In the framework of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, the Vice Minister of Ecology and Environment, Tsai Ing, said the Asian nation adheres to green and low-carbon development and takes it as the basic policy for realizing harmonious coexistence of people and nature. At a press conference held on Friday, Tsai introduced the measures taken by China to pursue green and low-carbon development to facilitate its comprehensive socio-economic green transformation, which covers mainly four aspects. First, reducing emission entities. Second, reducing both pollution and carbon emissions. Third, creating a new height from green development. Lastly, innovating green and low-carbon development policies.
Measures and requirements for upgrading industrial enterprise, renovating coal-fired boilers, and raising emission restriction of vehicles have been implemented. The research on green and low-carbon technologies have also been sped up, as well as the promotion and application of such technologies. Energy-saving and environmental protection industries have been fostered in 2021. The revenue of China's environmental protection industry reached about $30.08 billion, up 11.8% year-on-year.
China's effort in producing top-quality metals and its contributions to the World Skills Competition 2022 Special Edition have won praise from event organizers. Inspired by the traditional calligraphy of the Asian giant, designers put a Chinese character of Ji in seal script, which means skills in English, on the back of the medals, and each medal featured the competition logo at its heart on the front. World Skills Competitions, founded in 1950, represents the highest standard of skills excellence in this area, and the event takes place every 2 years in a member country. The competition kicked off on Wednesday in Bordeaux, France, and will last over a month, covering 62 different items in total. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.